The old alarm clock rang before the sun had even risen. Lucas, 9 years old, opened his eyes slowly, hearing the sound of the wind rattling the half-closed window. There was no smell of coffee or bread in the air, like he sometimes noticed in the homes of a few neighbors. Only silence. He looked at the thin mattress where he slept on the floor, next to his 2 younger siblings. His stomach was already growling, as if complaining about the absence of food since the night before. "Mom, is there coffee today?" he asked, his voice low and shy. His mother, already on her feet, washing an empty pot, sighed. "Not today, my son. But you'll eat at school." Lucas knew it wasn't her fault. She worked as a cleaning lady when someone hired her, but it had been weeks since anyone needed a maid. The fridge held only a bottle of water and a withering tomato in the drawer. He got dressed slowly, putting on his worn-out uniform, with a small stain on the shirt that never came out. On the way to school, he glanced at the bakery on the corner. The smell of warm bread escaped through the open door. His stomach tightened, but he looked away. In the classroom, while copying the lesson, hunger began to interfere. The letters seemed to dance on the page. When recess came, he stayed in the corner, pretending to be very focused on a drawing. Around him, classmates laughed, opening bags of cookies and sharing soda. Lucas never asked for anything. He had learned since he was little that asking meant hearing no and seeing strange looks. So he swallowed hard, waiting for time to pass, imagining the dismissal bell would ring sooner. That day, the hunger wasn't just in his stomach. It felt like it lived in his chest, too. That week, the hunger felt more stubborn. It wasn't just on the days when there was no food at home. Even when his mother managed to bring something, it was little, and the emptiness returned quickly. Lucas was already used to that dull ache in his stomach, but what truly hurt was the exhaustion that came with it. His teacher, Mrs. Celia, began to notice. "Lucas, are you okay?" she asked in the middle of a math lesson, when she saw him staring into nothing. He replied with a quick nod and lowered his head, afraid his voice might betray him. On a gray Tuesday, Lucas was walking back from school when he passed Mr. Alberto's bakery. He usually walked by quickly, but that day was different. Near the door there was a French roll on the ground, still inside a plastic bag, dropped next to a grocery sack someone must have let fall. He stopped, looked around. No one was nearby. Hunger hit him like a punch. His body almost stepped forward on its own. The bread was right there, whole, and through the plastic it looked clean. All he had to do was bend down, grab it, and leave. But along with the impulse came another feeling. Shame. What if someone saw? What if they said he was stealing? He stood still for a few seconds, his heart pounding. Then he took a deep breath and kept walking, feeling as though he was leaving behind his only chance to eat that day. At home, he found his neighbor Paolo, a young man of about 20 who lived alone and worked at a mechanic shop. Paolo was sitting at the door, eating the leftovers from a lunchbox. When he saw Lucas, he smiled and said, "Hey, want some?" "I can't finish it." Lucas, by instinct, almost said yes. But he froze. He imagined the scene of taking the fork, of Paolo later telling someone, "The kid was hungry, so I had to give him food." The shame burned more than the hunger. "No, thanks. I already had lunch at school," he lied. He went inside and shut the door quickly, leaned his back against the wood and closed his eyes. The lie seemed to have a bad taste, worse than the emptiness in his stomach. In the following days, hunger began to interfere even with the thing he loved most: playing soccer with his friends. His legs felt heavy, and his breath ran out fast. In one of those matches, he tripped over nothing and fell. The laughter from the others hurt more than the scrape on his knee. "You're weak, huh, Lucas?" a boy shouted. He laughed back, but he knew it wasn't a joke. It was the truth. At school, his performance plummeted. His grades dropped, and Mrs. Celia started calling him more often to talk. She noticed that Lucas almost never brought a snack and that, when the school lunch was delayed, he grew restless, glancing at the clock as if waiting for a miracle. One day, during recess, she came over with a buttered roll wrapped in a napkin. "Here, Lucas. It's leftover from the teacher's lounge." He looked at the bread, then at her, and shook his head. "I'm not hungry, teacher." but his stomach growled loudly, betraying him. Mrs. Celia didn't insist. She simply left the bread on his desk and walked away. Lucas kept staring at the closed napkin, smelling the scent that escaped. All he had to do was reach for it. But he waited until the bell rang, then picked up the napkin and slipped it into his pocket without opening it. When he got home, he placed it on the table for his siblings. That night, as he tried to sleep, the sound of empty stomachs seemed to fill the small room. Lucas thought about the bread at the bakery, Paolo's invitation, the buttered roll in the napkin. He realized that it wasn't just hunger that hurt, it was the weight of swallowing his pride along with it. On Thursday morning, Lucas woke up with the same feeling as every other day, an empty pit in his stomach and a heavy body. But there was something different in the air. His mother was sitting at the table, her head down and her hands clasped, as if she had stayed awake all night. "Lucas, Miss Celia wants to talk to me this afternoon," she said, without looking at him. He felt a tightness in his chest. Had he done something wrong? Maybe the low grades, or a fight that hadn't happened, but that he imagined others might make up. He didn't ask anything, just nodded and went to school. The day dragged on. At recess, the school lunch was rice, beans, and eggs. Lucas ate slowly, trying not to seem anxious, but he cleaned his plate to the very last grain. He could feel Miss Celia watching him from a distance. When the final bell rang, he saw his mother already at the gate. She wasn't angry, she was serious, but with a look he hadn't seen in a long time, as if she were trying to hold something in. They walked together to the teacher's lounge. Miss Celia greeted them with a warm smile and asked them to sit. "I've noticed Lucas has been tired, distracted, and that many times he doesn't bring a snack." She looked at his mother carefully, as if walking on glass. "I know it can be hard to talk about this, but I want to help." His mother sighed. It took a moment, but she finally explained. Her cleaning work was unstable, the bills kept piling up, and often the food didn't last until the end of the week. Ms. Celia listened without interrupting. Then she picked up a folder and pulled out some papers. "There's a city program to ensure food for families in vulnerable situations. I also know an NGO that donates food baskets and serves community meals on Saturdays. I'll register you today." Lucas didn't fully understand all the words, but he could tell something was happening. A kind of light began to turn on inside him. Timid but real. That afternoon, they left the school with a referral letter, an address written on a piece of paper, and a promise. Starting next week, Lucas would have breakfast, lunch, and an afternoon snack guaranteed at school. But the real change came the following Saturday. The NGO was in a simple warehouse, with light blue painted walls and the smell of home-cooked food. There, volunteers served rice, beans, roasted chicken, and salad to dozens of people. Lucas took his plate, heavy in his hands, and stared at it for a moment. It had been so long since he'd seen so much food at once that he didn't know where to start. The first bite was almost a shock. The taste of hot beans, the simple seasoning of the chicken, the crunch of the salad. His mouth filled, but so did his eyes. He swallowed quickly so the tears wouldn't fall, but they came anyway. "Is it good, son?" his mother asked, already eating beside him. He smiled with his mouth full and nodded. That day, Lucas didn't just eat until he was full. He ate until he felt that the emptiness in his chest, the one hunger and pride had carved together, was starting to be filled. In the days that followed, life didn't turn into a fairy tale. There were still overdue bills, hard days, and his mother's work remained uncertain. But now there was rice in the cupboard, milk in his morning cup, and a place where they knew they'd be welcomed. At school, Lucas went back to playing soccer with his friends. He regained his breath, his grades began to improve, and when Miss Celia passed by the classroom, he would raise his hand to wave. Over time, he understood that asking for help wasn't shameful, it was courage. And that sometimes pride can make us go hungry, but humility can feed us forever.